In the heart of downtown Chicago, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and the streets buzzed with ambition, there was a corporate office that seemed like any other. It was filled with people in sharp suits, clicking keyboards and endless meetings. But behind its polished glass doors lay stories untold, stories of struggle, resilience, and unexpected triumphs. Maya Carter walked into this world 5 years ago, armed with determination and dreams bigger than the city itself. She wasn't just another employee. She was someone who believed in fairness, hard work, and speaking up when something felt wrong. Over time, Maya had earned respect for her sharp mind and ability to solve problems others found too complicated. Yet despite her achievements, she often found herself on the receiving end of subtle jabs and dismissive behavior from some of her colleagues. On one particularly tense Tuesday morning, the air in the conference room was thick with anticipation. The team had gathered for an important meeting about their latest marketing campaign, a project that could make or break the company's standing in the industry. As presentations unfolded, Maya listened intently, scribbling notes and analyzing every detail. When it came time for feedback, she raised her hand confidently, ready to share her thoughts. "There's a flaw in the strategy," Maya said calmly, but firmly. "If we move forward without addressing this issue, it could cost us millions." Her words hung in the air, met not with gratitude or curiosity, but with silence. Then a senior executive named Greg leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Oh, come on, Maya," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Maybe you should stick to simpler things." The room erupted into laughter. Some people snickered behind their hands, while others exchanged knowing glances. One colleague chimed in, "Yeah, maybe next time let the experts handle it." Another added, "We don't need drama during meetings." Maya sat frozen, her cheeks burning. She had expected pushback. It wasn't the first time her ideas had been questioned, but this felt different. This wasn't professional disagreement. It was personal. They weren't attacking her suggestion. They were attacking her. Her voice, her presence, her very existence in that room seemed to bother them more than anything else. What none of them knew, however, was that Maya had spent years preparing for moments like these. Growing up in a small town in Mississippi, she had faced discrimination long before stepping foot in a corporate boardroom. From teachers doubting her potential to classmates mocking her accent, Maya had learned early on that the world wouldn't always be kind to her. But instead of letting negativity define her, she used it as fuel to prove herself. By the time she joined this multinational corporation, Maya had already built a reputation for excellence. She worked tirelessly, delivering results that spoke louder than any insult ever could. Still, no matter how many projects she completed or accolades she received, she couldn't escape the undercurrent of bias that followed her everywhere. Colleagues would exclude her from informal gatherings, overlook her contributions in group settings, and sometimes even question whether she truly belonged in such a prestigious organization. But Maya didn't let bitterness consume her. Instead, she started documenting everything. Every offhand comment, every exclusionary act, every instance of unfair treatment. At first, it was just a way to process her emotions, to remind herself that what she experienced wasn't imagined. Over time, though, those notes became something much bigger. Evidence. Evidence of a pattern, a system designed to keep people like her in their place. That day in the meeting, as laughter echoed around her, Maya realized two things. First, she understood that nothing would change unless someone stood up and demanded it. And second, she knew she had the power to do exactly that. While her colleagues saw her as just another mid-level manager, they had no idea what she was capable of or what she was planning. For 2 years, Maya had quietly been working with a team of top-tier lawyers, gathering information and building a case against the company. What started as a personal mission to address the injustices she faced had grown into something far larger. Other employees, emboldened by Maya's courage, began sharing their own stories of mistreatment. Together, they formed a coalition, united by a shared desire for accountability and change. As the meeting dragged on, Maya tuned out the voices around her and focused on the bigger picture. She thought about the countless hours she had spent researching laws, collecting data, and strategizing with her legal team. She thought about the sleepless nights spent wondering if she was doing the right thing. Most of all, she thought about the future, a future where no one would have to endure what she had gone through. When the meeting finally ended, Maya returned to her desk, her mind racing. She opened her laptop and drafted an email to Jonathan Reed, her trusted attorney. "It's time," she wrote simply, attaching the latest batch of documents she had compiled. With each keystroke, she felt a sense of purpose wash over her. This wasn't just about revenge or proving a point. It was about creating a better workplace for everyone. Little did her colleagues know their mockery that day would become the catalyst for one of the most significant lawsuits in corporate history. What they dismissed as mere frustration was, in fact, the beginning of a movement, one that would expose decades of systemic racism and hold the company accountable for its actions. And at the center of it all stood Maya Carter, a woman who refused to be silenced no matter the cost. As the sun set over the Chicago skyline, casting golden light through the office windows, Maya allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. Ready to fight, ready to win, and ready to show the world that speaking up, even when it feels impossible, is always worth it. Maya Carter's journey to that tense meeting room in downtown Chicago began long before she ever set foot in a corporate office. Her story was one of resilience, shaped by the challenges she faced growing up in a small town in Mississippi, a place where opportunities were scarce and prejudice ran deep. From an early age, Maya learned that life wasn't always fair, but she also discovered something powerful within herself, the ability to rise above. Maya's parents, both teachers at the local high school, were her first role models. They worked tirelessly to provide for their family, while instilling in Maya and her siblings the importance of education, hard work, and standing up for what was right. Every evening, the Carter household buzzed with lively discussions about books, current events, and dreams for the future. It was during these conversations that Maya developed her sharp mind and unshakable belief in fairness. But outside the safety of her home, the world often felt harsh and unwelcoming. At school, Maya excelled academically, earning top grades and participating in every extracurricular activity she could. Yet, despite her achievements, she frequently encountered stereotypes and biases. Teachers would praise her for being articulate, as if it were surprising for someone like her to speak well. Classmates teased her for her accent, mimicking her voice behind her back. Even when she won awards or led student organizations, there were whispers questioning whether she truly deserved them. These experiences taught Maya two valuable lessons. First, she realized that people's perceptions of her were often based on assumptions rather than reality. Second, she understood that she couldn't let those assumptions define her. Instead, she used them as motivation to prove herself, not just to others, but to herself. After graduating at the top of her class, Maya earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, leaving Mississippi for the first time. College was a whirlwind of new experiences, challenges, and growth. For the first time, she found herself surrounded by people from diverse backgrounds who shared her passion for learning and making a difference. But even in this seemingly progressive environment, Maya still faced moments of bias and exclusion. During her sophomore year, she joined a business club that promised networking opportunities and mentorship. However, when it came time to assign leadership roles, Maya noticed a pattern. Despite her qualifications and contributions, she was consistently passed over in favor of less experienced classmates. When she confronted the club's president about it, he dismissed her concerns, saying, "You're doing great, Maya, don't worry so much." His words stung not because they were cruel, but because they revealed a deeper truth. Some people simply didn't see her as equal. Determined not to let setbacks deter her, Maya poured her energy into her studies and internships. She landed positions at top companies, impressing supervisors with her work ethic and innovative ideas. Each success brought her closer to her goal of breaking into the corporate world, but it also reinforced her awareness of the barriers she faced. Whether it was being mistaken for support staff instead of a consultant, or having her suggestions ignored until a white colleague repeated them, Maya saw firsthand how systemic racism operated in subtle yet pervasive ways. By the time she graduated, Maya had developed a thick skin, but she hadn't become immune to the sting of discrimination. Instead, she carried each experience with her, using them as fuel to drive her forward. She vowed to build a career where she could make a real impact, not just for herself but for others who might feel invisible in spaces dominated by privilege. When Maya accepted a job offer from the multinational corporation in Chicago, she saw it as a chance to break through glass ceilings and pave the way for future generations. The company prided itself on innovation and diversity, boasting glossy brochures and annual reports highlighting its commitment to inclusion. On paper, it seemed like the perfect place for someone like Maya to thrive. At first, things went smoothly. Maya quickly earned a reputation as a problem solver, tackling complex projects with ease and earning promotions along the way. Her colleagues admired her intelligence and dedication, and for a while she felt like she belonged. But as she climbed the ranks, she began noticing cracks in the company's facade. Behind closed doors, decisions were made based on favoritism, rather than merit. Conversations about diversity were performative, lacking substance or action. And whenever Maya tried to address these issues, she was met with resistance, or worse, silence. Over time, Maya started keeping detailed records of her experiences. She documented every instance of bias, from exclusionary practices in hiring and promotions to derogatory comments made during meetings. She saved emails, recorded conversations, when legally permissible, and gathered testimonies from other employees who shared similar stories. What began as a personal journal evolved into a comprehensive file, a blueprint for holding the company accountable. Maya knew she couldn't tackle this alone. She reached out to Jonathan Reed, a renowned civil rights lawyer known for his work on high-profile discrimination cases. Their initial meeting took place in a quiet cafe near Maya's apartment. As she laid out her evidence, Jonathan listened intently, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Maya, you have something here, something big." Together they crafted a strategy that went beyond addressing individual grievances. This wasn't just about Maya. It was about dismantling a system that had oppressed countless others. By expanding the scope of the case to include multiple plaintiffs, they transformed it into a class action lawsuit seeking $1.6 billion in damages. The amount wasn't arbitrary. It represented years of lost wages, missed opportunities, and emotional tolls inflicted upon marginalized employees. As preparations for the lawsuit intensified, Maya found solace in knowing she wasn't fighting alone. Other employees, inspired by her courage, came forward with their own stories. Some recounted being passed over for promotions despite stellar performance reviews. Others described being subjected to racist jokes or derogatory remarks. Each testimony added weight to their case, painting a damning picture of a company that prioritized profit over people. Through it all, Maya remained focused on the bigger picture. This wasn't about revenge or settling scores. It was about creating lasting change. She envisioned a workplace where everyone, regardless of race, gender, or background, could succeed without fear of bias or discrimination. She dreamed of a future where no one would have to endure what she had gone through. And so, as she sat in that meeting room, listening to her colleagues laugh at her expense, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. Ready to fight, ready to win, and ready to show the world that speaking up, even when it feels impossible, is always worth it. The laughter in the meeting room echoed like a storm cloud, heavy and oppressive. But for Maya Carter, it marked the moment everything changed. That day, as she walked back to her desk after the humiliating exchange, something inside her shifted, a spark ignited, turning years of frustration into an unshakable resolve. She knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the people who had been silenced, overlooked, or pushed aside because they didn't fit the mold. And Maya was done staying quiet. As the workday wound down and her colleagues filed out of the office, Maya sat at her desk staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she replayed the events of the day in her mind. The mockery, the dismissive remarks, the way her ideas were brushed aside. It wasn't new, but today felt different. Today, it hit harder. Today, she realized, that silence wasn't an option. She opened her email and typed a message to Jonathan Reed, the civil rights lawyer who had become her trusted ally. "Jonathan," she wrote, "it's time." Attached to the email was a folder containing months' worth of documentation. Emails showing how her suggestions were ignored until a white colleague repeated them, screenshots of offensive messages, circulated among co-workers, and notes detailing every instance of bias she'd encountered. Each piece of evidence told a story, not just hers, but the collective story of countless others who had suffered in silence. Jonathan responded within minutes. "Let's move forward," he wrote. "We have what we need." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Filing a lawsuit against one of the largest corporations in the country wasn't something to take lightly. There would be risks, personal, professional, emotional, but Maya knew the stakes were too high to turn back now. This wasn't just about holding the company accountable. It was about sending a message to the world that discrimination, no matter how deeply entrenched, could not go unchecked. Over the next few weeks, Maya and Jonathan worked tirelessly to build their case. They reviewed every document, every testimony, and every detail to ensure nothing was overlooked. Maya reached out to former and current employees, encouraging them to share their experiences. At first, many were hesitant. Some feared retaliation if they spoke up, while others doubted whether anything would come of it. But as Maya explained the scope of the lawsuit and the potential impact it could have, more and more people joined the fight. One such person was Tasha Monroe, a former HR manager who had left the company after repeatedly raising concerns about discriminatory practices, only to be met with indifference. Tasha's testimony revealed how the company systematically sidelined Black employees during promotions, favoring less qualified candidates based on nepotism or racial bias. Another key witness was Evan Patel, a South Asian engineer who recounted being excluded from important meetings and mocked for his accent by senior executives. Their stories, along with dozens of others, painted a damning portrait of a toxic workplace culture that thrived on inequality. With each new account, Maya grew more determined. She spent hours poring over legal briefs, learning about employment, law, and strategizing with Jonathan. Though the process was exhausting, it also gave her a sense of empowerment. For so long, she had felt powerless against the system. Now she was taking control, not just of her own narrative, but of the broader conversation about equity and justice in the workplace. Meanwhile, the company remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath its surface. Executives continued with business as usual, oblivious to the fact that one of their own employees was quietly orchestrating a movement that would soon rock the foundation of their organization. In fact, some even joked about Maya's outburst in the meeting, dismissing it as a minor blip in an otherwise successful quarter. No one suspected that behind closed doors, Maya and her team were preparing to expose decades of systemic racism. As preparations for the lawsuit progressed, Maya faced moments of doubt. There were days when the weight of it all felt overwhelming, when the fear of failure loomed large. What if the court didn't rule in their favor? What if the company managed to discredit their claims? These questions haunted her, but she refused to let them paralyze her. Instead, she leaned on the support of her family, friends, and colleagues who believed in her cause. Her parents, especially, played a crucial role in keeping her grounded. During a phone call one evening, her mother said, "Maya, you've always stood up for what's right. Don't let anyone make you think your voice doesn't matter." Her father added, "This isn't just your fight. It's everyone's fight. You're doing something brave, and we're proud of you." Their words reminded Maya why she had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about creating a better future for the next generation. She thought about the young interns she mentored, the junior employees who looked up to her, and the countless individuals who dreamed of breaking into industries dominated by privilege. If she succeeded, she could pave the way for them to enter those spaces without facing the same barriers she had endured. By the time the lawsuit was officially filed, Maya had transformed from a mid-level manager into a symbol of resilience and courage. News outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the allegations of systemic racism within the company. Headlines blared across newspapers and social media platforms. $1.6 billion lawsuit accuses corporate giant of decades-long discrimination. Overnight, Maya became a household name, a beacon of hope for marginalized communities everywhere. For the company, however, the news came as a shock. Executives scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing public statements denying the allegations and vowing to investigate the claims internally. Privately, though, panic set in. Behind closed doors, there were heated arguments and frantic meetings as leaders tried to figure out how to salvage their reputation. Some blamed Maya, accusing her of betrayal and greed. Others pointed fingers at HR departments and managers, claiming they had failed to address issues before they spiraled out of control. Amid the chaos, Maya remained steadfast. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also knew she wasn't alone. The support she received from colleagues, activists, and strangers alike reinforced her belief that change was possible. Messages poured in from people around the world, thanking her for having the courage to speak up. Many shared their own stories of workplace discrimination, expressing gratitude for finally seeing someone stand up to the powers that be. As depositions began, the truth came tumbling out. Former employees recounted harrowing tales of harassment, retaliation, and unequal treatment. Internal memos revealed explicit discussions about maintaining a certain image for leadership positions, code for favoring white candidates over equally, or better, qualified minorities. Emails showed how complaints of discrimination were routinely dismissed or buried, leaving victims feeling helpless and unheard. Each revelation struck a blow to the company's carefully curated image. The facade of progressiveness crumbled, exposing a structure built on exclusion and bias. For Maya, watching the pieces fall into place was both validating and heartbreaking. On one hand, she felt vindicated knowing that the truth was finally coming to light. On the other hand, she mourned the years lost to injustice, the dreams deferred, the talents wasted, the lives derailed by prejudice. Through it all, Maya never lost sight of her ultimate goal: accountability and transformation. This wasn't about tearing the company down. It was about rebuilding it into something better. She envisioned a workplace where diversity wasn't just a buzzword, but a core value, where opportunities were based on merit, not bias, and where employees felt safe, respected, and empowered to succeed. As the lawsuit gained momentum, Maya found herself reflecting on how far she had come. From the little girl in Mississippi, who once doubted her place in the world, to the woman now leading a landmark legal battle, her journey had been anything but easy. But every challenge, every setback had prepared her for this moment. And as she stood on the precipice of change, Maya knew one thing for certain: the fight was far from over. But the tide was finally turning. The lawsuit against the multinational corporation sent shockwaves through the business world. But for Maya Carter and her team, it was only the beginning of a long and grueling process. As depositions unfolded and evidence mounted, the company's carefully constructed image began to unravel like a thread pulled from an expensive suit. What had once seemed untouchable, a corporate giant celebrated for its innovation and global reach, was now exposed as a fragile facade hiding deep-seated discrimination. At first, the company tried to downplay the allegations. Executives held press conferences, assuring shareholders and the public that the claims were exaggerated or outright false. They promised transparency, vowing to conduct internal investigations while simultaneously painting Maya and her fellow plaintiffs as disgruntled employees seeking attention. But behind closed doors, panic spread like wildfire. Senior leaders scrambled to contain the damage, holding emergency meetings late into the night. Emails flew back and forth between executives, HR managers, and PR teams, each trying to figure out how to spin the narrative in their favor. Meanwhile, Maya remained focused. She knew the company's attempts to deflect responsibility wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. Every piece of evidence they presented in court told a story, one that couldn't be ignored. Former employees took the stand, recounting painful experiences of exclusion, harassment, and retaliation. One woman described being passed over for promotions despite consistently outperforming her peers. Another recounted how she was mocked for her accent during team meetings, leaving her too humiliated to speak up again. Each testimony added weight to the case, painting a damning picture of systemic bias. Internal documents also played a crucial role in exposing the truth. Emails revealed explicit discussions about maintaining a certain look for leadership positions, code for favoring white candidates over equally qualified minorities. Performance reviews showed patterns of skewed evaluations where Black and minority employees were rated lower than their counterparts, even when their work was identical or better. Training materials designed to promote diversity were found to be nothing more than lip service, with no real action taken to address underlying issues. As the trial progressed, cracks within the company began to show publicly. Employees who had once laughed at Maya's expense now avoided eye contact in the hallrooms. Some even reached out to her privately, offering apologies or expressing support for the lawsuit. While Maya appreciated their words, she knew these gestures came too late. Genuine allyship required more than hollow statements. It demanded accountability and action. For many of Maya's former colleagues, the lawsuit became a reckoning. Those who had mocked her during meetings suddenly faced questions about their behavior, not just from lawyers but from friends, family, and the media. Social media buzzed with screenshots of past comments and actions, forcing individuals to confront the consequences of their words. Some tried to distance themselves from the controversy, claiming they hadn't meant any harm. Others doubled down, accusing Maya of exaggerating the situation or using the lawsuit as a way to get rich quick. But the tide of public opinion was shifting, and it wasn't in their favor. The turning point came when Tasha Monroe, the former HR manager, delivered a powerful testimony. Speaking calmly yet firmly, Tasha detailed how she had repeatedly raised concerns about discriminatory practices only to be ignored or silenced. "I wanted to believe in this company," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her emotions. "But every time I tried to make things better, I was shut down. It wasn't until I left that I realized I wasn't alone." Tasha's words resonated deeply, both inside and outside the courtroom. Journalists covering the trial highlighted her testimony, emphasizing how it underscored the broader culture of fear and complicity within the organization. Public pressure grew, with activists calling for accountability not just from the company, but from other corporations guilty of similar practices. Protesters gathered outside the company's headquarters, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya and equality can't wait." The message was clear. This wasn't just about one lawsuit. It was about dismantling systems of oppression everywhere. Back in the courtroom, Jonathan Reed, Maya's attorney, skillfully connected the dots, showing how individual acts of bias contributed to a larger pattern of institutional racism. He argued that the company's failure to address these issues amounted to negligence, costing employees not only financially, but emotionally and mentally. His closing statement struck a chord with everyone present, including the jury. "This isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet," he said. "It's about people, real people whose lives have been impacted by decisions made in boardrooms. Today we have the chance to send a message. Enough is enough." By the end of the trial, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. What had started as skepticism toward Maya's case transformed into widespread recognition of the injustices she and others had endured. Even some of the company's own employees began speaking out, demanding change from within. A group of mid-level managers drafted a letter to senior leadership, urging them to take meaningful steps toward reform. Meanwhile, shareholders grew increasingly uneasy, worried about the financial and reputational fallout if the verdict went against the company. Finally, after months of deliberation, the jury reached a decision. When the judge announced the ruling, ordering the company to pay the full $1.6 billion settlement, the courtroom erupted in applause. For Maya and her fellow plaintiffs, it was a moment of vindication. Tears streamed down faces as they hugged one another, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had achieved. Outside, crowds cheered, celebrating a victory that felt long overdue. But, for Maya, the win wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. This verdict wasn't just about punishing one company, it was about setting a precedent. It sent a clear message to organizations everywhere. Silence in the face of discrimination is complicity, and justice will prevail when courage meets determination. The weeks that followed, the company issued a formal apology, pledging to implement sweeping reforms. They hired external consultants to review policies, created task forces to address inequities, and committed to publishing annual diversity reports. While some questioned whether these promises would lead to real change, Maya remained hopeful. She knew the fight wasn't over, but she also knew progress often started with small steps. Through it all, Maya emerged as a beacon of hope and resilience. Her story inspired countless others to speak up, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one voice could spark monumental change. And though the scars of her journey would always remain, Maya wore them proudly, as reminders of how far she had come and the lives she had touched along the way. The courtroom erupted in applause the moment the judge announced the verdict. The multinational corporation, once seen as untouchable, had been ordered to pay the full $1.6 billion settlement, a historic win for Maya Carter and the hundreds of employees she represented. For Maya, the victory was more than just a legal triumph. It was a validation of years of struggle, resilience, and unwavering belief in justice. As she stood there, surrounded by her fellow plaintiffs, tears streaming down her face, she felt a profound sense of relief and purpose. But even as the cheers filled the room, Maya knew this wasn't the end of the road. Winning the lawsuit was one thing, ensuring real change was another. She understood that money alone couldn't undo decades of systemic discrimination or heal the emotional wounds inflicted on so many. What mattered most now was what came next, how the company would respond, how society would react, and how the ripple effects of this case would shape workplaces around the world. In the days following the verdict, the company scrambled to repair its shattered image. Executives issued public apologies, promising sweeping reforms to address the issues exposed during the trial. They hired external consultants to audit their policies, created diversity task forces, and committed to publishing annual transparency reports detailing their progress. While some critics dismissed these efforts as performative, others saw them as a step in the right direction. Maya chose to remain cautiously optimistic. "Actions speak louder than words," she told reporters during a press conference. "We'll be watching closely to ensure they follow through." For Maya, the settlement funds weren't just a reward. They were an opportunity to create lasting impact. She decided to use part of the money to establish the Carter Foundation for Equity in the Workplace, an organization dedicated to promoting fairness, inclusion, and equal opportunities in corporate settings. The foundation focused on 3 key areas: education, advocacy, and support. It offered scholarships to underrepresented students pursuing careers in business, provided resources for companies looking to improve their diversity practices, and served as a safe space for employees to share their experiences without fear of retaliation. Maya also became a sought-after speaker, traveling across the country to share her story and inspire others to stand up against injustice. Her talks weren't just about her personal journey. They were calls to action, urging audiences to examine their own biases and push for meaningful change. Whether speaking at universities, corporate conferences, or community events, Maya's message resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. "Change starts with courage," she often said. "Courage to speak up, courage to listen, and courage to act." As word of her work spread, Maya found herself at the center of a growing movement. Activists, advocates, and everyday individuals reached out to thank her for paving the way. Many shared their own stories of workplace discrimination, expressing gratitude for finally seeing someone challenge the status quo. Social media campaigns emerged, using hashtags like #YoungStandWithMaya and workplace equity to amplify the conversation. Companies began reevaluating their practices, fearful of facing similar lawsuits if they failed to address inequities within their ranks. Despite the accolades and admiration, Maya remained grounded. She knew the fight for equality was far from over. Discrimination didn't disappear overnight, and not every company would willingly embrace reform. But Maya believed that progress was possible, one step, one voice, one decision at a time. She continued mentoring young professionals, encouraging them to pursue their dreams without letting bias define their paths. "You belong here," she told them. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Back at the office where it all began, the fallout from the lawsuit lingered. Some employees who had mocked Maya during meetings faced disciplinary actions or lost their jobs altogether. Others quietly left the company, unable to bear the weight of accountability. But amidst the turmoil, there were glimmers of hope. A new generation of leaders emerged, determined to build a workplace culture rooted in respect and fairness. Employees formed committees to discuss diversity initiatives, and managers began actively seeking input from marginalized voices. For Maya, witnessing these changes was bittersweet. On one hand, she felt proud of the strides being made. On the other hand, she mourned the years wasted on toxic environments that could have been nurturing instead. Still, she refused to dwell on regret. Instead, she focused on the future, the possibilities ahead, and the lives she could still touch. Her journey transformed not only her own life but the lives of countless others. Former colleagues who had hesitated to join the lawsuit initially reached out to thank her for giving them a voice. Strangers wrote letters describing how her courage inspired them to confront injustices in their own lives. Even some of the executives who had once dismissed her ideas admitted privately that they had underestimated her and vowed to do better moving forward. Today, Maya is widely regarded as a trailblazer, a symbol of resilience and empowerment. Her name appears in textbooks, documentaries, and articles about workplace equity. Yet despite the fame, she remains humble. "This isn't about me," she insists whenever asked about her legacy. "It's about everyone who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or undervalued. If my story can give someone else the strength to speak up, then it's worth every challenge I faced along the way." As she looks back on her journey, from the small town in Mississippi to the bustling streets of Chicago, from moments of humiliation to standing victorious in court, Maya feels a deep sense of fulfillment. She knows the scars of her past will always be a part of her, but they no longer weigh her down. Instead, they remind her of how far she's come and the battles she's won, not just for herself, but for generations to come. And so, Maya Carter continues her mission, fueled by the belief that speaking up matters, that one voice can spark a movement, that justice may take time, but it's always worth fighting for. As she travels the country, inspiring others to dream bigger and demand better, Maya leaves behind a legacy of hope, courage, and unyielding determination, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, change is possible.